Okay, so welcome to Adobe Basics One-on-One with Denver Community Media. My name is Megan. I'm one of the instructors at Denver Community Media. I teach Adobe classes. Today, we're just doing an abridged version of our 4-hour class, which is a little more in-depth if you want to take that and sign up for that one next. You'll learn a lot more. But let's go over some of the things that are going on during this month of October. We have our Harvest Your Creativity membership drive where you can win prizes, get 25% off of your membership when you take a workshop or a class and leave a Google review. We have, if you donate $8, you can win, you've a chance to win a free annual membership with us, which is really great. And if you come to our Halloween Spooktacular next month, there's a chance to win even more prizes and fun there. So I hope you join us there. Let's get started. So before we even jump into Premiere Pro, we want to talk a little bit about file organization. So what I like to do is I like to set up these files. Oh, let me change that to list. I like to set up files that include audio, exports, footage, graphics, and my project files. I like to keep everything all cohesive and in one spot for organizational purposes so I can find everything. Everything is in one spot. If I lose a piece of audio, then I can easily find it and relink anything that may have become unlinked in Premiere Pro. So this is kind of my file structure. Feel free to, when you make yours, to name it anything else that might work for you. If you don't like project files, maybe you name it Premiere Projects. If you don't like audio, maybe it's music, things like that. You can get as detailed as you want. But come up with a format that works for you. And what's really awesome about this is that Premiere Pro supports clicking and dragging folders into Premiere, and it will keep your file structure. So that's also super important. You don't want your files to be in your downloads folder and then you delete your downloads folder and you can no longer find your files. So file organization is super important. So after that, to start, we're going to open Premiere Pro. Are you all set up in Premiere Pro?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to hit the new project button, which is this blue button in the left-hand corner. I am going to name this class and then date it. Name your files whatever your project is, obviously. And then in location, when I hit my drop down button and hit choose location, this is where I can go back to my file, to my files and save it in project files. The reason that I made a whole new bin for this is because you can see over here on the right-hand side, Premiere will often auto-save your files. So if it crashes, you can go back and find a later file that you're working on, or if you made a mistake and you want to go back, you can go back to previous files. So it always generates auto-save files, so you don't want those just like hanging out anywhere. So I like to keep them all in one cohesive spot. So I'm going to hit select and create. Now I want to talk a little bit about the tabs that are up here at the top right hand corner. We have all of these workspaces from learning, assembly, editing, color, effects, audio, and so forth. This is where you're going to tab through depending on what you're working on. So if you're working on editing your audio, you'll work in audio primarily. Effects is for if we're trying to put transitions or any effects on our media. Colors for primarily color correcting, but right now we're going to stay in our editing tab. This should get you 4 little areas, 4 panels here. One is our source monitor, which is this first one here. Next is our program monitor here. Right below the program is our timeline. And then we have our media. So whatever rule of thumb is, whatever is below it is what is shown up here. So my raw media will pop up here when I want to view it. And whatever is on my timeline, I'm going to view up in my program. So let's start by importing media. So as I said before, Premiere is pretty cool because it will keep your file structures. Whoopsies. Oh no. Sorry about that, people watching online. Premiere will keep your file structure if you click and drag to import. There's a few different ways you can import. My favorite is clicking and dragging. So I'm going to take my footage, I'm going to click that, drag that over into media, and also my audio. If I had any graphics or logos, I would also bring this over, and any other footage or material that I want to work with. The other way is to go through your media browser, and you can search your computer for any of the footage that you want. This helps preserve sidecar files in case you need that extra data. But for these purposes, I just click and drag, and you can see that it kept my bins. So it kept my file organization structure. And you can see they're all here. Do you have any questions about that so far?
I didn't organize it in the beginning, so.
Okay, yeah.
Through a bunch of clips.
Yeah, so how you actually can organize them, if you say I didn't have this file organization and I want to organize in Premiere, there's this little button that looks like a file folder right down here. Do you see that? I'm going to go ahead and click that. It says new bin, and it's going to make me a new bin. Oh, this made my bin in my audio, which I don't want. I'm going to make sure that I'm not in any of my folders. I'm going to click new bin, and I can name it graphics. And then from there, I would take, say this one is a graphic. I would take that and put it in my graphics folder. So you can still organize things even if you didn't organize them from the start. It's just easy. It just makes it a lot easier to keep everything organized. So your head isn't spinning and you're not really confused about what is what. Yeah, absolutely. So another thing that I make whenever I'm in here is I make a bin and I title it sequences. So that is where my sequences or my timelines are all going to go. So say I have episodes, I have a TV show and I have multiple episodes. I can duplicate my sequences to have the same intro, to have the same credits, and just delete the middle portion. And I can keep duplicating my sequences for episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. So I like to keep all of my sequences together, and we'll get a little bit more into that a little later. But to start actually editing our footage, I'm going to go into my footage, and I'm just going to go ahead and double click a piece of footage. So let's go with master. So you can see when I double click, it pops up in our source monitor. So I'm able to see what I'm working with. And then I can hit the space bar to play. I can hit the space bar to pause. I can use the key J to reverse it. I can use the key L to speed it up. And if I keep pressing it, it'll go faster and faster. And I can use K to stop. So those are some keyboard shortcuts that I often use just to scrub through my footage pretty quickly. And then, of course, I can use my playhead and scrub through it like I just was showing you. If you use the arrow keys left and right, will bring you frame by frame in either direction. And that's another way that you can navigate through your footage. When it comes to actually editing, Say I don't want this entire piece of footage on my timeline. I just want a small portion of it. I'm going to use the keys I and O on my keyboard for in and out. You can also use these little squiggly marks for in and out, but I like to use my keyboard shortcuts. So say I want to start here. I'm going to go ahead and click I for O, and you can see that it highlighted from this point to the end of my footage. Then if I'm scrubbing through and I know that I want to stop when he looks up, I'm going to go ahead and hit O, and this is the only portion that's going to go onto my timeline. Now, the way that I like to put things into my actual timeline is I like to click anywhere in the video, hold, and drag it down to my timeline. And now that is footage that I can further edit, color correct, cut up, etc. You can also use things like insert, but that is going to insert it wherever your playhead is. And what's dangerous about that is if my playhead is here and I hit insert, it just cut into my original video. So that's why I really like to click, hold, and drag things in and just place them where I want them to go. So you'll see that I made a new sequence down here, and you can tell that it's a sequence because it doesn't have the film strip and the audio strip that the footage has. The symbol looks like a timeline down here. So now I can take this and I can put it in my sequences folders. So then I'll get less confused because it titled itself what my footage was. So now I have a master timeline and I have a master piece of footage here. So that can get a little confusing. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to put it in my sequences folder, and I'm also going to right click and hit rename because I don't want it to be called that. I want it to be called Project 1. So now this has a different name, and it's no longer called what my footage. It no longer has the same name as my footage, so it's a little less confusing for me. The next way to edit is actually going to be in our timeline. If you go to our little toolkit to the left of the timeline and select the razor tool, we can actually cut up our footage. So I can say, I don't want from here to here. I don't want this piece anymore. So I cut it. What's important is you have to go back to your cursor and then select and hit the delete key. So again, I am clicking my razor tool, selecting what I don't want, going back to my cursor, and then I am selecting what I don't want and hitting the delete key. So say I just made two big gaps in my project, and rather than selecting everything and moving it forward, what I'm going to do is click in this dead space and hit the delete key, and my footage will come together. So that can be very handy. Other ways, we can trim the backs and the head and the tail of footage. We can extend or trim it by hovering over the tail or the head, and you get a little red arrow. And what we're going to do is just move it to the left or to the right to extend or trim down our footage. So that's mainly the ways that I am trimming things up. Another thing to note is when I bring a different piece of footage in, let's say I want this one, and I'm just going to click randomly in there, click and drag. I have the option of putting this on top of all of my footage if I wanted to, and creating another layer. So you can have as many layers and tracks as you want, but whatever is on top is what's going to be seen. So even though I have him in a pretty good medium shot here, I have him in a medium shot for about the first 4 seconds. None of that is going to be shown that is underneath this shot now because I've placed it on top. So whatever is on top is what's seen, but all of the audio tracks will be heard. So that's something to think about when you are bringing in media. Do you have any questions on cutting?
I just want like later, like if I get a trick sheet about the shortcuts.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I can show you where to find that in Premiere, and also I actually have this. Let me give you this. I'm so sorry. I have this, which gives you a little bit of what so some of the shortcuts that I've mentioned. And I also always love to tell people that Command Z is undo. So if you ever make a mistake, just undo it. So after we have cut together a project that we like, say this is, I'll put in one more. I'll put in something else just for fun. Let's match his action of him looking at the clock. So he's looking up. Let's match right when he starts to turn his head. And he starts to turn his head there. Okay. So that looks pretty good to me. That looks like looks like a good transition there. So say that's all I want in my project. And I'm ready to move on to my next tool. I'm going to start adding titles and graphics to my project. So I'm going to go up to my captions and graphics tab now, which is up in the right-hand corner. So here, Premiere has a whole bunch of built-in templates, lower thirds, credits, title screens, everything here, which is really cool and really handy. You can also download things offline and add more into here. But let's say that I want this title. I'm going to click and drag that in. And again, since it's on top of my footage, that's what you're going to see. So that is, and I don't want it to cover the whole thing, maybe just 1 second. So now I'm going to go over to properties from the graphics templates. And this is where you can see all the effects that are already on it and where you can change the text. So my texts are logo type, where I can add my own logo down here, or I can change what this says where it says presents. The other way, rather than going through your graphics templates, is to make your own text. So if we go back to editing, there's a little T in our toolkit on the left-hand side of the timeline. I'm going to click that T and I'm going to click anywhere on the screen. And I'm going to type whatever I want that to say. From here, I'm going to go back to my captions and graphics, hit properties, which is how we're going to edit any kind of text. And now you can see where it says hello here. I can change my font size. I can change the positioning of anything. I can change the actual font if I wanted to. I can change the fill color. Say I want it to be black. Add a shadow. I can align it better. And that is how I'm going to add text here. So now I have a little hello. And I don't want that to be. There we go. So what's really cool is that if we go into our effects controls tab, we can actually animate our text. So effects controls is a tab that is on our left-hand side, right under export. Now this will do what it says. It will control the effects that you place on any type of media that you have in there. What we want to do here is use keyframes to make the text grow. You can make it spin. You can make it enter from one side of the frame and exit the other. So right now, let's just make it grow. So that would have to do with our scale. So if I scale it up and down, I can make it grow. But we have to add keyframes in order for it to do what I want it to do. So next to scale, there's a little stopwatch. I'm going to go ahead and click that, but I'm going to set my scale to where I want it to start. So I want it to start pretty small. I'm going to hit my stopwatch, and you can see it makes a little diamond here. That is it telling Premiere where our start point is. Then if I scrub through towards the end of that graphic, I'm going to make it grow. And let's see what happens. And there we go. We just made our text grow. This might be handy if you're doing like credits or something and you want something to scroll up the screen. I use that a lot for this, or just kind of animating anything in a really fun way. Do you have any questions about that one?
I have some questions about adding the My Voice, My Community template later. I don't know why it's not loading. But
Okay.
I'll ask you later.
Okay, sure. Okay, so we went over how to get kind of more graphics in here and all of the things that Premiere has to offer here. Next, we're going to talk about some transitions and effects. So we're going to go to our effects tab now. And it also has built-in effects. So say I want a video transition first, and I want my footage to cross dissolve out. So like a fade. So if I click and drag that to the end, you'll see it forms a little box, and that's how you know that your effects are affecting the footage, are going onto the footage. Maybe I also want my text to fade out. So I'm going to go ahead and add that there as well, and we can just kind of see what happens. Text fade out, and then fade to black. The reason that this didn't fade to black is because there's no footage over here. It's just black. So it's going to fade into whatever's next. And so it just faded to black because there's just black over here. You'll notice that the effects will make some sort of box. The transitions will make a box, will make a visual cue on your footage. So let's also go to a fade on the audio. It also makes a box right there, and you can kind of see, if we zoom in, you can see that curve that it created. You can see a line there that shows that it is actually fading down the audio. And the way that I just zoomed in on my timeline, zooming in and out, is the plus and minus keys on our keyboard. So it's a quick way to zoom in. You can also use these handy dandy sliders towards the bottom and the top of your screen to move and zoom in and out. The difference between transitions and effects are that the effects don't leave any visual cue that they are on your footage. They also don't automatically do what they say that they're going to do. You have to tell it what to do. So for example, if I add a blur to this piece of footage, there's no visual cue that has been added. But if I go into my effects controls tab, you'll see that my blur was added over here. We also see that it didn't do anything to my footage. I put a blur on and my footage is not blurry. So what I have to do is actually tell it by cranking up the blurriness here I have to tell it what to do, and now it's fully blurry. And again, what we can do is we can add those keyframes, which might be fun, starting with 0 blurriness and ending with 316 blurriness. Let's see what happens there. So you can see it gradually blurred the footage. But the effects control tabs is super important because you have to be able to control your effect and tell it what you want it to do. In most cases, you have to do that with the effects, and transitions will do it itself, and it will give you that boxed visual cue. Moving on to our audio, the easiest way to control your audio is actually going to be right on the audio strip itself. We have this little white line in the middle. This is called a rubber band. And this is the easiest way to increase or decrease our volume. But say I have a spike right here in my volume that I don't like, that's just too loud, but I don't want to decrease the volume of my entire piece because it's just that one spot that's too loud. I can make more keyframes on my audio. So if you look over here, you'll see a diamond. If you don't see that, what we want to do is just stretch that track because it's not there naturally. So we want to stretch the track out and you'll see the diamonds. So we're going to click that. It made a little diamond here, made a little circle. I'm going to go after the spike. I'm going to click it again. Then I'm going to go right where the spike is and click it. So I have 3 little diamonds. I have 3 keyframes here. And what I can do with this middle one is pull it down so that just that part of the audio is affected. So just that part dips down and comes back up. Sometimes you have to be really precise with it to make it sound natural, but if you stretch this out, it's a more kind of seamless transition. But that is the easiest way that you're going to control your volume. Now, of course, in the effects control tab, you can increase and decrease your volume there as well. And in our audio tab, we can also increase and decrease our clip volume here. Now, what our audio tab is good for is clearing up our audio. So let's say that this is dialogue and it has some background noise, it has some buzzing, it has some humming from the room that you don't like. I'm going to go ahead and click reduce noise. I'm going to put that around 3. I would not go past 3 or 4. It starts to distort things and sounds unnatural. From there, it's a good way to reduce some noise. It's not going to take everything out, but that's what I use most often. You can also set EQ. You can enhance the voice as well. And you can do something called enhanced speech, which is kind of making voice recordings sound like they're a little more professionally recorded. So those are kind of the things that I use most. It's very simple audio editing, but honestly, the most that I'm doing, the majority of the time, is keyframing out the audio that is too loud and just kind of playing with the volume here. As long as it is produced correctly, then it should sound good. But also enhancing your speech and playing around with kind of your vocal enhancements could really help with some interviews if you're interested in that. So lastly, we're going to dive a little bit into color. So with color, we have all of these options to dive into. I like to stay in basic correction. Premiere Pro isn't the best with color. I recommend DaVinci Resolve for color, which we have a color correction, DaVinci Resolve color correction class taught by Austin here, which is a great class to take if you're interested in color grading. But let's talk a little bit about color in Premiere. So for basic color correction, You can take the easy route and hit auto, and your Premiere project will do its best to try to tell the footage what the correct color should be. So it looks a little better, but if you wanted to do all of that manually, this is how you would do that. So to white balance, I'm gonna go ahead and click my dropper and find something white in the room. So the wall should be white. So I'm gonna click the wall, and that should be a good indication of how the room actually looked when it was filmed. You can see that the temperature and the tint changed. So it added a little blue and a little bit of magenta into the picture. With the light, so that was color. So with light, you can mess with the exposure, which adds a little bit of light or subtracts it. Contrast, if I want it to be a flatter image or a more contrasted image. Highlights and shadows do that. Anything that is the brightest will get brighter or dimmer. Anything, and then all the shadows will either rise or get deeper. And then this one controls the blacks and the whites in the picture. As you can see, as I'm adjusting all of these, my scales are, sorry, my scopes are changing. So if I move my highlights up and down, you can see how that's fluctuating in the scopes. And what all of these mean, so this second scope right here, which has our circle, this is our vector scope. This really helps with finding skin tones. Every single skin tone will fall on this line right here. I don't know if those online can see, but there's a diagonal line that intersects this circle. And all skin tones should fall on this line. If I say I turn it magenta, you can see that this color is going more towards magenta. It's not going towards this red-yellow. It's going this way now. And you can see that reflected because his skin tone is now magenta. Our RGB is red, blues, and greens. They should be pretty balanced, unless you're like in a forest. Obviously, there's going to be more green. If someone's wearing a bright red shirt, there might be red, a little more spiked. But for the most part, we want them to be balanced. And you can see that looks pretty balanced there. The blue is spiking a bit because of the blue chairs. And lastly, our Luma scale. We don't want our brightest brights to go past 100, and we don't want our darkest darks to touch the 0. So you can see that it's crushing our blacks a little bit and our shadows here because it's touching 0. So maybe you might want to bring up your blacks, and that might be a more accurate picture to how it was actually filmed. Lastly, we're going to go over exporting. So say I'm all finished with my project. I'm going to go to the very beginning of my project and hit I for in. I'm going to go to the end of my project, zoom all the way in, and press O for out. So that has selected my whole timeline. When I go to export, I can change the name of my project. It's going to take on the name of whatever the timeline was called. Actually, I like that, so I'll just keep it at project 1. I can choose where to add that. So if we go back to our file organization, I made a folder for exports specifically to keep everything together. So I want to keep it there. And then I'm going to go ahead and choose my format, which will be H.264 the majority of the time. That is something that will go everywhere. YouTube, TV, DVDs, anywhere. So that's pretty universal, and that's what I would recommend that people export in the majority of the time. I'm going to say I want the export range to be source in to out, which is what I selected. And then I'm going to go ahead and click export. And you can see right next to the export is send to media encoder. This is another program within the Adobe suite that, say I have a project that is 2 hours long. I'm going to send it to Media Encoder because it's going to take up all the power of Premiere. And say I have to edit a different project, I want Media Encoder to take over the exporting so I can continue to work in Premiere. So that is our class. If you attended online, thank you so much for attending. If you're interested in taking the longer, more in-depth course, let us know. You can sign up on our website, denvercommunitymedia.org. And for those in person, we can go ahead and